Alrighty then. It is I, the Metallist, once again. Another exciting episode of, excuse me, another exciting episode of 5 albums you all should own. And digging through the closet and looking at some of the earlier parts of the alphabet. So today we got some stuff towards the beginning of the alphabet to get you going here. Like I say, some you might be familiar with, some not so much, but all really, really good stuff. So let's get started. These guys you've probably heard of. This is Accept. This is called Blood of the Nations. This was an amazing comeback album. And it featured a new singer, Mark Tanielo. I'm not quite sure how to say it. He came from a band called TT Quick. But if you know a little history behind Accept, they showed up, early, probably late 70s actually, and started putting out albums in the early 80s. Got pretty popular in the mid 80s with things like Balls to the Wall and Metal Heart and these Russian Roulette, Breaker, those kind of albums. And then they kind of went away for a little bit, and they came back with Udo Dirkschneider, their original singer, and they put out some not real well-received albums in the mid-90s. Let's see, there was Objection Overruled, Death Row, and Predator, I believe. And did a little bit of touring under those albums, and then it kind of went away again. And they went away for about, 15 years or so. And Wolf Hoffman, their guitarist, had moved to Nashville. And he was actually doing a lot of stuff as a photographer. Matter of fact, I think he has websites and does his photography and that kind of thing. And somehow he got hooked up with this guy from TT Quick, Mark Tanielo, I think is how you say it. And, please correct me on that if you would. And all of a sudden, Accept was back. And oh man, are they back. This album is just freaking amazing. And Mark is it's kind of the equivalent of Brian Johnson with AC/DC. He's not Bon Scott, but we still like him, And that's this guy. He's not Udo Dirkschneider, but we really like him, okay? And they have put out a string of albums since this time. They've been putting out a pretty steady string of albums here since 2010. And we were fortunate enough to go see this tour. Myself, my good buddy Chuck came up from Cincinnati, and another good buddy of mine named Jeffrey. He's a little bit of a younger guy, so he's kind of missed all the stuff we saw back in the day, like I'd seen Accept as far back as '84 at the Cleveland Agora. There's actually a really good version of that particular show on YouTube. It's from, I think it's March 27th, 1984. But I think if you just go to YouTube and type in Accept Cleveland 1984, it should come right up. It was a radio broadcast, so it's a really good quality thing, so check that out. And I think I've actually talked about that show on previous episodes. But anyway, so they came roaring back with this guy, and we went to see this particular tour. Like I said, my buddy Jeffrey, and we call him Jeffrey to distinguish him from all the other Jeffs I know. I seem to know a lot of Jeffs. Excuse me. But anyway, so Jeffrey went with us to the show, and he's about at least 20 years younger than Chuck and myself. And he was just losing his mind. And we're like, dude, it was always like this back in the day. It's good stuff. So if you're not familiar with the latest round of Accept albums, please do yourself a favor, okay? So good stuff here. All right, now to my favorite band of the last decade or so. This is their first release, the Black Star Riders, or Thin Lizzy for the 21st century. And we say that because originally we had Damon Johnson, who had played with a sort of what I'll call a tribute version of Thin Lizzy. Of course, Scott Gorham, who's actually in Thin Lizzy. Jimmy DeGrasso was their drummer originally from Y&T. Marco Mendoza, who's been all over the place on bass. And a guy named Ricky Warwick as the lead singer. And Ricky is from Belfast, so you got to have an Irish guy if you're going to have that Thin Lizzy sound. Okay. So he, like I say, he's from Belfast, and he was in a band previously called The Almighty. The Almighty was a little more rough and ready, shall we say. They were a little harder and heavier and that kind of stuff. But this record, if you love Thin Lizzy, this is it right here. Like I said, this is as close to 21st century Thin Lizzy as you're going to get. And at this point, when we went to see these guys play live, about half the set was Thin Lizzy and about half the set was their own stuff. And as time went on, they've released 3 more albums. So they've kind of gone away from playing a lot of the Thin Lizzy stuff, which is fine because their own stuff can stand up on its own. But again, this particular album, yeah, if you're into that Thin Lizzy sound, this is the good stuff. And try to get this copy because there's an extra tune on it called Right to Be Wrong. Definitely worth it. But like I said, title track is amazing. Bound for Glory has Thin Lizzy written all over it. It's like, okay, is this a song that that Phil wrote and just never got around to recording, or there's a demo of it someplace? Because I mean, it's that good. Other great songs on here: Kingdom of the Lost, Hey Judas is amazing. Voodoo Hoodoo is kind of a fun little song. But yeah, this is just some really good stuff. So totally recommend this one. And in the deluxe edition, also there is a DVD in here. So we have the, oops, here's the book. So we got the album and the DVD. And the DVD is about the making of the album, which is pretty cool. So yeah, really good stuff. Totally recommend it. And this album came out in 2013. And like I said, they've released several since then. A few lineup changes. Scott and Ricky are still in the band, but still really high quality stuff. So go for those guys. All right. So in one of my previous episodes, I had mentioned a band from Cleveland called Shock Paris. I also mentioned another band that was worth their while in the area. And these guys, along with Shock Paris, used to open most of the shows where like a national band would come through town, but like, you know, a smaller quote unquote level band would come to the Agora, and these guys would always be the openers. These guys were Shock Paris, and these guys are Breaker. Yeah, love me some Breaker. Go back way with these guys. This is a nice double CD set here. Again, another shout out to Bill Peters. This is on Auburn Records, the same record label that had Shock Paris. And so we have the original album, which came out in '87, although they have singles as far back as I think '83. Maybe 83, 84, somewhere in there. So anyway, so this is the original album up here. Then we got all kinds of other tracks that they released over the years or didn't release over the years. They also have a coffee break concert, which is something they did in the Cleveland area at WMMS in Cleveland, where a band would come through town, maybe an opening band, and like at noon or 1 o'clock, I think maybe 11 sometimes, this band would open up and they would do a show in the middle of the day, which I guess was kind of tough on them, but then they would broadcast it live on the radio. So Breaker was so popular that they actually did a coffee break concert, and it was put out on CD. That is available as well. So again, check out Auburn Records and get yourself some Breaker. This is great stuff. Okay. All right, next up, we're going to head north to the Great White North. No, we're not talking about Rush, not Triumph. These guys, Coney Hatch. Big fan of these guys. If you like AOR style rock and roll, this is your stuff right here. And this was a heck of a good band. Here's the boys in the back. Here we go. This fellow over here in the blue, that's Carl Dixon. Actually, through the years, I've become a pretty good acquaintance of Carl's. He does a show every year in Orlando at the Hard Rock around Christmas time. We usually go out and say hi and see him there. But yeah, saw Coney Hatch back in the day. Their first show ever in America was at the Cleveland Agora, and I happened to be there. Then a year or so later, they went on a big tour with Iron Maiden, and they opened up for Maiden. It was Iron Maiden, Fastway, which was Fast Eddie Clarke's band. It was supposed to be Pete Way from UFO, but there was some contractual problems with that, so that didn't actually work out, even though Pete's name is in it, Fast Eddie Clarke, and Pete Way, Fast Way. Get it? Oddly enough, their singer, Dave King, has a band now called Flogging Molly, which doesn't sound anything like Fastway. It was always fun to horrify the Flogging Molly fans by playing them Fastway. They were just horrified. You know, their wonderful singer couldn't have been part of a hair metal band, if you will. Okay. But anyway, like I say, good AOR kind of stuff. They put out 2 more albums like this. Then they would do reunion shows here and there, but they hadn't played out much. And then a few years back, they put out a 4th album called 4, which I was very pleased to get. So like I say, if you like that just good AOR kind of rock and roll, these guys, amazing. Okay, last one for today, Desperado. So this is a record that Dee Snider did right after Twisted Sister, not right after, but pretty close. And it was Dee Snider, a guy on bass named Mark Russell. Mark later ended up in Dee's next project called Widowmaker. The late, great Bernie Torme on guitar. Bernie played for quite a few years with the Ian Gillan Band, and just some great pyrotechnics. This guy knew his way around a whammy bar, okay? Some really great solos on this record. And also the late, great Clive Burr, formerly of Iron Maiden. So this was after Maiden for Clive and after Twisted Sister for Dee. So I'm thinking this was, I want to say, I don't know, around 1990 maybe? I don't remember the date. This is actually a quote-unquote bootleg of this album because at the time they were getting ready to put this out on Atlantic Records, and Atlantic pulled the plug at the last minute. So Dee didn't have the rights to this, but I guess he was literally promoting on his website that he knew where you could get good copies of, because he wanted people to hear this. It's that good. I personally think it's the best thing Dee Snider ever did. Love it. And like I say, Bernie Torme is amazing on here. Some of these songs did end up on the Widowmaker projects. Gone Bad was on one of them. I think Calling to You was on one of them. But the standout track on this one is one called See You at Sunrise. And if The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly ever gets a remake, that's your soundtrack. See You at Sunrise. It's basically like a Western shootout type of thing. And the solo that Bernie does at the end of this, mind-blowing, okay? One of my top 10 solos of all time, and most people will never hear this. So this got reissued at some point under the name Ace, so you might look for it there. But yeah, this is an amazing record. Here's the guys on the back. So of course Dee with all the hair up here. Over here's Mark, and over here's Bernie, and over here is Clive. You know, like I say, so. And for my money, I always thought Clive Burr, I enjoyed him better than Nico in Iron Maiden. I think he was faster. I think he was more fluent. And don't get me wrong, I love Nico. Plus he's hilarious too. But so that's what I got for you for today. But again, like I say, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You have any suggestions for what you think are albums that everybody should own? Would love to hear about them. Let me know what you think about these, particularly if you haven't heard them before. You go check them out. Let me know if you think they're worthy of this kind of status. And we will see you guys all again next time. So I want to thank you again for watching, and we'll see you then.